I'm here with Felix Tani, and I'm very, very excited because I follow Felix on various social media channels, and um, I can hear you play beautifully. I would say, from my ignorant standpoint, that I mostly hear you play jazz. Is that a fair categorization? Do you think of yourself as a mostly jazz player or just as a piano player?
Good question. I see myself more like a musician or something, but I tend to play mostly jazz, and I do some also some own compositions that are kind of minimalistic, and I played pop music and studied classical music for a long time also. So yeah, music.
Oh,
Yeah.
brilliant eclectic mix, yeah. And there's a nice link there because, of course, you and I did spend some time studying with the great Sophia Rosoff, who was a student herself of the pioneer Abby Whiteside
Yes.
um, in New York. And she Sophia tended to sort of make a bit of a speciality of working with a lot of jazz players. Do you think they just sort of gradually, what's the word, gravitated towards her in some way?
Yeah, I think she played with Artie Shaw, I think, Sophia. So
Did
she was,
she?
yeah, she did. So she was,
Wow.
she- I think she also, she told me she loved the jazz world. It was not so like competitive or stiff like the classical world.
Like me.
So she I know she loved jazz, and I don't know. Maybe I think it could be Barry Harris was the first who studied with her, and Fred
Yeah,
Hirsch.
Barry Harris, yeah.
So and I think a lot of their students studied with Sophia. So I think maybe that was the entrance point for a lot of jazz players. So via
Mm.
Fred Hirsch, I think that's my guess. So, but I, I read a book, but had a hard time understanding it. I know the stuff was right, but hard to, yeah.
Do you mean, oh, there's a motorbike outside. That's pretty loud. Um, so when you say the book, do you mean as in Abby Whiteside's writings?
Yeah, I got hold of it when I was 15, 16 or something, and
Really, that young? Okay.
uh, because I had a teacher who made me do a lot of like Hanon and scales and all that stuff, and I got like problems here, get tight, and my
Mm.
playing was, as you said, deteriorating. So so I read a lot of books, and I got it from another teacher, a great classical pianist in Sweden, professor in the Concerto in Malmö, who I studied with, and but he didn't talk anything about technique, but he had that book, and he gave it to me, and when I watched him play, it was a lot of like she describes, like very using the whole body, and but he couldn't really you know, explain in detail what he did, but I could observe him play, and it was looked very great. Like, and then I found out about Sophia and emailed her, and I think it was the second time I went to New York. I had my first lesson with her, and then I think it been there 5 or 6 times with her. So I
Wow,
am.
that's quite a story. So we have more in common than I thought, because I obviously, well, I say obviously, but it's well documented that I studied that I struggled with injuries when I was at music school, and that was ultimately what led me to Sophia. It's interesting that you emailed her. I was before that. I had to write to her on paper. I think email had only just been invented then in the 1990s. But it's interesting you're saying about how accessible or not Abby Whiteside's writings are, because she sort of tended to revise till her deathbed, really, some of her concepts, and sometimes she calls them by different names, and but it is beautiful prose. But obviously, what I've been trying to do with Piano Portals is distill some of the essential premises and principles into a more accessible, practical framework. And you have very kindly been exploring some of the piano portals patterns.
Yeah.
So today we are going to explore a few pieces of repertoire in relation to maybe how some of the patterns could help.
Mm.
So how have you been getting on? Because I know we've had a session before, and you've had a few breakthroughs, I think. What you say where you want to start?
Yeah, because I had, trouble to understand this flexion extension, as in the book, and
Well,
so
that's one of Whiteside's central things that she picks up on, isn't it?
yeah, because Sophia was more like talking about this movement was like, and this has been
Oh,
thing you know, uh, the thing I got, and it have helped me. But I realized that this is a bit missing in my playing, or I've thought a bit, maybe doing it a bit in the wrong way. I don't know. It's hard to get. I don't have
yeah.
to study regularly with Sophia, so I have my own like interpretation. But with your, like, the dog pause that has realized, I think, especially playing chords is, I think like in Chopin, the Etude, I think the problem is the chords, not the scale, actually.
So we're talking about the Chopin Etude
Yeah.
Opus 10 number one, yeah? Yeah. So I don't know, should we have a look at how that's going now, or do you want to start, because you were also doing some chords in a simpler context as well, just to kind of get that connectedness. I think it was the Ravel Pavane, wasn't it?
Yeah. Should we start with that maybe?
Yeah, I think it's nice, isn't it, to kind of just get that connected
Yeah.
integration
Mm.
flowing
Yeah.
and then transfer it to a more complex
Yeah.
context, perhaps. Yeah. So how's the Pavane going then? Because it was sounding beautiful, obviously, before.
Yeah, it's getting better. I think it's a bit, actually a bit harder to do it when you do it so slow. Uh,
Interesting.
Anyway,
Which
it's
aspect is
easier
harder,
when,
do you mean?
the flexion. I think it's a bit easier when there's more like a rhythm going. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just an observation. I think it's maybe easier to like stop the motion when you go very slow.
Interesting.
Or yeah,
So do you want to play a bit or demonstrate that? That's fascinating. Yeah. Yeah. Because I mean, obviously, Whiteside's concept of
mm.
connecting with the rhythm of the music, the flow, the ongoing momentum of the music is absolutely crucial to um, to the whole framework.
Mm.
And sometimes I think if you go too slow,
Mm.
you kind of get out of that, don't you? And it becomes a bit sort of disjointed and maybe more self-conscious, perhaps.
Yeah, I think so. So yeah, it's easier when the music is like more flowing, I think.
Yeah.
Or when I play like in some kind of rhythmic way, like a samba or pop tune. I don't think so much. But here
Yeah.
it's very quiet and so.
Yeah. I think that kind of music where the rhythm is very foregrounded and it makes you want to dance. I think it's easier to kind of slot into a much freer coordination. So go on then. Let's see some of these chords in action. Do you want to just play a little excerpt and
Yeah, I played
show us?
the chordal plays here.
Lovely. Oh, it's gorgeous.
Ah, it's nice.
So how happy are you with that now? Like on a scale of 1 to 10?
Maybe 6, 7.
Oh, really? Gosh, that seems a bit harsh. So what
um,
would you still like to improve about it?
um, I can sometimes feel that I maybe, you know, get a little stiff. Maybe stop the flow. I don't know. And sometimes when I'm not like really resting on some chords, I notice that we talked about last time, and I try to jump too early to next chord, and that
Interesting.
like seems like a habit of, as in the Chopin Etude, that I maybe tend to go and grip some chords. There's still maybe some of that in my playing. Okay.
Interesting. So we're talking about essentially how the extension of the forearm helps the thumb. The free extension of the forearm helps the thumb to play.
Mm.
And then if you've got a long chord,
Mm.
you can just kind of leave it fully extended and nice and free, you know. And then it's free to flex in between the chords. And that was one of the main activities of the forearm that Abby Whiteside drew attention to. What's interesting is that your torso is really beautifully engaged and acting as your control center, because without that
Mm.
poise and groundedness and involvement with the torso, your forearms feel quite unsupported. So that's working beautifully. I always like it when I can hear the chair squeak because that shows that you're sitting in your sitting bones.
Uh,
Um, well, it does,
uh,
it's a nice indicator.
mm.
So, which bits in particular? Go on, just can you see if you can demonstrate a section the where it maybe feels a bit less free, or maybe because are we talking about how does it actually affect the music making? Like, does it affect the sound? Does it affect how happy you are with the sound that you produce?
Mm. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, yeah, it's like this thing of controlling it. And maybe it gets a bit too loud, or there's some, you know, I don't
Yeah,
know, accents or something that's,
yeah.
and that's.
And I think, yeah, absolutely. And I think for me, that kind of sense that,
Mm.
you want to get it just how you want it. And so sometimes
Mm.
excess tension creeps into the forearm or the wrist and it tries too hard to control the sound. Whereas in fact, if it's free,
Mm.
ultimately it's easier to control. So go on, let's explore a few little sections where maybe it could be even freer because it does sound lovely.
Thank you. Maybe from here, like here. I think maybe when I have the thumb on the black note, it's
Interesting.
and also here
So can
is
you play that music exactly like that? Don't change anything except just play the thumb music in the right hand. So just play one note in the thumb and play the left hand normally, but pretend that you're playing everything.
mm,
Yeah, that's nice. And maybe just so that it feels really musically meaningful, maybe just take one phrase. So imagine one phrase of the tune
mm,
that's currently muted,
mm,
and just for a start, I would practice starting with your hands on your lap every time, so that when you lift your hands to play,
mm,
especially if you hum as well, if you
mm,
hum anything, Doesn't matter. You could hum the tune that's missing, or you could hum that thumb tune, or you could hum the bass.
Mhm.
But if you just connect that with the kind of the upbeat to play, the breath, and then that helps you to feel like your torso and your engaged core is helping you to play right at the outset. So I would start with your hands on your lap
Mhm.
and really clearly imagine the missing tune. So I
Mhm.
would hum along, start with your hands on your lap, and imagine that missing tune and exactly the dynamic contour that you want, the rise and fall, and just see if that helps you to control those dynamic nuances. And then keep all of that and add the rest of the chords, but not the tune.
Okay.
Now, that was different because you started with your hands at the key surface, which immediately introduces a slightly different feeling to the coordination. So if you think of that first chord in your mind, maybe
Mhm.
have a glance at where it is on the piano as well, and then keep that flow and integration because that was gorgeous.
Okay.
How does that feel?
It feels better. Uh,
Were you humming anything?
yeah, not so loud.
Yeah, no, it's fine. You don't have to hum loudly. Yeah. In fact, sometimes I borrow the whispered R from the Alexander technique. So that
Okay.
is literally what it says on the tin, whispering R. So as you start to play, you just breathe in normally as if you're going to sing, and then just whisper R. And that you can sometimes feel as if you're holding your breath because there can be a choppiness in the R. So it can go, ha ha ha, ha. I'm exaggerating. Um, how does it make a difference starting on your lap
Yeah,
or not?
it does. I tried to think about it, but yeah, you tend to forget it. But yeah.
I think your best friend is juxtaposing these things. So I would maybe do one or two bars or just something with
Mm,
just the thumb,
mm,
just to set up the coordination,
mm,
and then immediately play it all.
mm,
So why not try that? So fully focused,
mm.
and you can either whisper the R or you could hum and just play a little bit with just the thumbs and then stop
Yeah.
and then play it all.
And everything.
So obviously we're talking about quite subtle things. I mean, it still sounds gorgeous, but does it feel any different?
Mm. It feels a little bit better, yeah. I think it can be a little bit freer. I tried a little bit by myself, just playing, as you mentioned, with the thumb. I want to. So I think that's like maybe the key, you know.
Yeah.
And
And I know you were just showing me that as a point of demonstration, but I would make sure that um, when you do that, um, you put your full focus on it. Because again, I know you were just demonstrating, you weren't even facing the piano, but when you did that, it almost looked like you were playing the thumb on the way up. And so it just goes to show how much
Yeah.
focus we might need initially just to get that freedom and integration, which is why, you mentioned the dog paw thumb activity. It's why that initially, I think, should take place in a very, very simple context, you
Mhm.
know. So if you like, just as an experiment, if you play in both thumbs,
Mhm.
just a little black key tune, something really simple, and then play those Ravel thumbs, but doubled up in both hands.
Mhm.
Do you want to try juxtaposing those two?
Yeah.
That's lovely, yeah. And only you know whether that feels like it's freely operating. And are you absolutely sure that you're playing on the down? Like you've
Mhm.
got the feeling that when you play, that's when the forearm is extended as full. It won't be fully extended, but when it's extended as far as it's going to go.
Maybe there could be some place that I was a little bit unsure, if I'm really honest.
And
And
you mentioned the sound, you mentioned the samba and things, these wonderful, infectious sort of rhythmic styles.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, can you sort of just to sort of tie up this moment on the Ravel, can you sort of mess around with the chords a bit? Like maybe go back to the whole texture and I don't know, just play it as chords or put
Mhm.
some different rhythms in. So not necessarily with all the repeated notes, but
Mhm.
just maybe, I don't know, messing around with the chords as if it's a slightly different style. Sorry to put you on the spot.
Of course. Um,
That looked really planned, but I promise we didn't plan that. That was amazing. That was really fantastic. So interestingly then, so if you take that as your what Abby called the emotional rhythm or the basic rhythm of the music and just do exactly that, but a little bit slower
Mhm.
and experiment with just how much you can control the dynamic nuance. So
Mhm.
maybe sometimes slow it down and go really
Mhm.
soft as you choose. And
Mhm.
then maybe swell, go up and down a little bit. Just play with the sense of control and where that comes from. Any feedback on that?
No, um, it's a yeah, it's a I think I'm more like maybe in the moment when I do that. It's when I'm improvising. I'm not
Yeah,
thinking. No, I'm not thinking. I'm just doing it. Like,
yeah. And when you, I'm just gonna get the score up here. I'm hoping it's just right here. There it is. Um, so when you play softer,
hmm?
make sure you don't do it by coming
No.
up and forward like that. You want to feel as if this is why it's so lovely to breathe and or hum freely, especially if you're doing that. So if you're doing ba 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 da ba da or whatever, you're either humming that along or just quietly vocalizing to yourself, and you can be free and grounded in your torso and really play with the dynamic nuance without going that way. I'll give it a try. I don't know the I don't know this piece as well as you.
Mm,
I
nice.
mean, that wasn't perfect. Some of the chords weren't quite together, but that's because I'm not giving my full focus because I haven't learnt them thoroughly enough. But you see, I can just essentially playing quieter is just playing more gently, isn't it? So I find that the clear intention
Mm,
is very important. Just out of interest, because you say about feeling freer and not thinking overthinking it when you're improvising. Like how much are you still referring to the sheet music in this music, and how much are you like? Do you feel like you know what chords are coming next?
Um, maybe like 80%. I'm especially when I'm maybe leaving stuff out. Yeah. So
So
I
if you do that one last time and just so with the rhythm, but a little bit slower than the original time, and then sometimes just really slow up like I did, just to play with just how much control you can have over soft playing. And maybe sometimes at those moments shut your eyes and just be in the moment and just really put your mental focus on what you want.
mm,
How does that feel?
pretty good.
Sounds lovely. And where is that dynamic control coming from? Where in your whole body mind setup? What is controlling that?
I think it's almost like in the sitting bones. Almost, I feel it down. As I was like, it's almost like I don't know, moving into them. So it's not
It's
just.
weird, isn't it? And can you confirm that I didn't pay you to say that? No, I'm joking. But seriously, that feeling of being so heavy in
Yeah.
your sitting bones, it almost is like a symbiosis. It's like the body goes that way, the torso, I mean, into the sitting bones goes that way, just by purely releasing it into your sitting bones, like dripping paint. And then somehow it makes your forearms and your hands and fingers feel
Mm.
like they're just on the end of something bigger. They're kind of lighter and easier to control. The only context I've ever found that to be discussed in public, apart from Abby Whiteside's books, where she talks a lot about the sit bones,
Mm.
is in certain strains of meditation,
Mm.
where because people sit for hours and hours, They have to sit in their sitting bones.
Yeah,
Otherwise,
yeah,
stuff starts to ache.
yeah.
And also, I was privileged to hear a talk recently by an eminent physiotherapist who works with musicians in the UK called Dr. Sarah Upjohn, and she talked about sitting in the sitting bones in this talk that she was giving to musicians. And I thought, oh, okay, wow. And it brought home how little I've heard that referred to. I don't know. I mean, does anybody else talk about these things?
Yeah, actually, one of the greatest things I had when I went to Royal College of Music in Stockholm was
Oh yeah.
ergonomist for musicians. We had like the first 2 weeks. So the first thing we did was standing, and standing. You stand on your toes, and then your whole spine and everything comes in alignment and going down, and you can feel how if you push someone. You have to experiment with that, like pushing someone, how your posture is, how it changes when you are coming down from standing on your toes.
Do you
Then we
mean
did,
on tiptoes?
yeah, so you sit and because all your body comes, and then we do it. Then we did it sitting. So it was this like ideal fire, as Sophia said. So
Oh, what did
that
she say? What did she call it?
if I call fire, she said you should be like alert to.
Oh,
Fire
fire. Okay.
was like fire. So that kind of,
Ah.
and I think that's helped me not having so much back pain in the years of all playing.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And so I missed who you said was talking about that in Stockholm in the music college. Who was talking about this?
It was as a woman. She was I don't remember her name, but it was she was like ergonomics. Is that right?
Right. So was she a music teacher or was she like a specialist in this area?
I think she was because we had her only for 2 weeks, in the start. So everybody, and they had to do it with with the saxophone or guitar or violin or whatever they played. So and
Interesting.
it was like when you are like waiting for the bus or something else, you can stand on your toes and come down, and it becomes
Yeah.
integrated. So that was the only one that. That was actually one of the best things I learned at that school.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
Uh,
Wow. That's so interesting. Yeah,
yeah,
because I mean, I think that you kind of if you get what that feels like to start really sit, I mean, it seems obvious because you sit on those bones all the time,
mm,
but to actually get that feeling, and I'm talking metaphorically, of course, because I'm not a medic, but that feeling of releasing your torso against the bones. So, like, sometimes I get the children that I teach to imagine that they're a short person
mm,
and that the two sitting bones are their feet,
mm,
so they don't have any legs or feet if they,
mm,
um, are sitting like that on the floor. And then just to walk around the stall. So imagine you're walking backwards and then walk forwards, and these sitting bones are your actual feet. Um, and also, I get them to wind themselves up
yeah,
and then back down again, like the jack that you use to crank the car up to change the tire.
yeah.
Things like that. So no, I think yeah,
But I think maybe I can just play some a jazz thing. Very.
yeah,
You see, I play this Living Green, uh,
yeah.
which is a bit kind of inspired by Ravel. So I have a yeah. That's easier for me to play. I don't know. It's maybe because I'm feel more free. I don't have to play, exactly. Maybe.
Yeah. So what happens if you play a bit of that and then switch immediately to a section of the Ravel, but don't worry too much about the Ravel. Like, even if you start with Ravel and then it sort of morphs into something else, or maybe you play a different chord here or there, doesn't matter. So again, this power of juxtaposing the two things.
Mm.
What do you think?
Yeah, I was quite happy with that. I don't know how it sounded.
Sounds lovely. I
Yeah.
mean, at the end of the day, you want to bring enough awareness to these freedoms,
Mm.
especially if you feel like they're holding you back. I mean, if something's okay, I would leave it alone. But
Mm.
if you've felt over a long period of time that certain excess tension in your forearm, as you described, is sort of holding you back from
Mm.
playing especially more complex music, you've got to bring enough attention to them,
Yeah.
but then you don't want to fixate on them so
Yeah.
that that becomes overly self-conscious. You've got to then you've got to know what it feels like to feel free enough,
Mm.
and then almost trick your body into going to that free place, by just creating the environment.
Mm.
um it's like the oh, I wonder if I can find it. Did you ever read Georgi Sandor on piano playing?
Yeah, I did. Long time ago.
I mean, he and I share quite a lot of ideals in common, I would say. Certainly in terms of general principles. Um, like for example, he says things like trying to work on finger independence,
Mm.
whatever that means, disrupts their interdependence,
Mm.
of the entire apparatus,
Mm.
you know, and it sort of he says it abuses the forearms by kind of fixing them
Ah.
and stopping that lovely interconnectedness. All of these things he says, but then like like Whiteside perhaps in his prose, he goes into such mechanical detail
Mm.
that ultimately, I don't know, does that draw us away from our goals because we become fixated on these tiny details? I think you've got to give them enough awareness
Mm.
without becoming absorbed by those little rabbit holes, maybe.
And I noticed, especially with chords, uh, when I play something more loud, there's a different sensation if you really um, there's like a sing in the chords, ding, more. Like if I play,
Yeah,
there's like, there's something, rather when I like more use my fingers to grip something or, so, if you're
yeah,
playing,
absolutely.
the Grieg. I noticed, I tried, I was experimenting with that, playing that with the thumbs there.
Interesting.
Because of chords, so I have the tendency maybe to grip chords with my fingers sometimes.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah. So, I mean that is a quite a profound observation because again, I know you were just demonstrating and talking to me at the same time, but there can be quite a difference. Like, for example, when you play the chords,
Yeah,
is it that you're stopping at the key surface to touch and find the chords,
yeah.
or are you going directly to them? You see, if you play that with the thumbs, So see what happens if you play with your thumbs. But you can do it in slow motion, whatever makes you feel comfortable, but commit to the emotional connection with it. Yeah, beautiful. And I know I know this is a tangent, but I think it's worth
Yeah,
exploring because it's the same issue, isn't it? So
yeah,
this time, hum da 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 da. The same, hum the same thing over and over at the same pitch. So don't try and go, la 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 la, and then all the way down. Just imagine that you're playing just six different notes or however many different notes there are, and the humming itself is what focuses your attention on those notes.
yeah,
And when you play the semiquavers, the da da da, feel those to be an upbeat. So
yeah,
don't give equal weight to them. I mean, I know you weren't, but lighten them even further. So it's almost as if, even though this is free, um, the freedom there is absorbed into the greater momentum of the phrase. So you've got ba 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 ba. That sort of thing.
hmm? I give it a try.
Yeah, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. Yeah. And interestingly, as soon as you play that first one,
Hmm?
you're up and away.
Yeah,
So when you play that first long note,
yeah,
just stay there. Just let your extended forearms just sit in a little deck chair for a moment.
yeah.
And then just play the first like three notes. I won't let you I won't make you keep playing this over and over again. But just that if you watch me play the first one,
Yeah.
lovely. Yeah. And then if you want it even quicker and more flowing, then the semiquavers just need to be lighter, basically, and they need to feel more like a pickup, an upbeat. And then when you add some more notes, so
Hmm?
what about adding just the right hand chords but not the little finger octave in the left hand? So if you just play again, you don't have to play the whole thing, and then compare the feeling. It obviously will feel slightly different because your hand is more extended,
Hmm?
but essentially, does it feel similar?
Hmm? Yeah.
What's the difference?
Um, yeah, it felt pretty good actually this time because I noted this thing also when in the Ravel when I played like octaves that I don't sometimes I don't really there's a difference when I play just the thumb and I play the octave and then sometimes I play it in a more like shallow way.
Yeah.
Same in that this I don't and I think that could also go well, interfere with the right hand because they are not connected. This feeling
Mm.
of not maybe letting go. Oh, like here, I don't really do it. Yeah, so they influence each other in a way. So I
I th-
noticed that's why I looked at the Grieg thing because it's it's a lot of chords moving fast.
yeah, absolutely. And I think the words that you use are really serving to illustrate just how much awareness you're bringing to this stuff. Because you said about that shallowness. I know exactly what you mean by that. It's as if when you're playing powerfully,
Yeah.
you want those freedoms
Yeah.
to be completely free so that nothing is stopping the
Yeah.
power or interfering like a kink in the hose pipe, you know? And then what was the other you said? Not just the shallowness, but oh, I've forgotten what you just said then.
That, the hands influence each other's. I think if that's not really
Yeah,
working, like you say, like in the C major, the first
yeah,
etude, it's not you're not really playing that
yeah.
first. It like goes sips out to the right hand. I think. So,
No, absolutely.
that
Yeah.
combination.
And with that in particular, so that's Chopin Etude Opus 10 number 1. Um, you know, if there's a kind of holding back or any kind of rigidity or a lack of freedom in that forearm, um, assuming that you know the tune in here and
Yeah.
assuming that your torso is also engaged and free, um, you can't get any sort of power in it, you know? I mean, I think it's almost worth, again, humming along like we did with the Grieg. I mean, the most powerful thing I've found in that etude is to actually hum da da. Obviously, you can't hum, but I hum it da 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 da. But if I do start with the thumb, so I'm just going to play da 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 da, and then maybe two notes da 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 da.
Mhm. Mm.
Yeah, nice. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So it happened something this week.
Yeah. And with music like that, I cannot emphasize enough how important it is to essentially hum each note in your mind. And it's not easy to literally hum that music, obviously, but if you can find a way of making it singable so that something, spread out like da 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 is just da 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 da, you know? And the later ones like
Yeah.
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 So that da da la la is actually da 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 da. And if I lose concentration on actually singing those notes, um, then my hand will just sort of take over. It'll detach itself from my mind, and then
Mm.
it'll start hitting wrong notes. But if I can stay present, so this is why I think it's important that you talked about playing slowly. If you go too slow, then you lose that
Yeah.
momentum, that rhythm. However, if you go too fast, then it's possible that your hand will just go off on its own. And I think Whiteside called it traveling. The hand just kind of gets detached from everything else.
Yeah.
So that mental presence is so, so important. And it's important for accuracy.
Mm.
And And I think that, the easiest way to do it is to sing. And if you can't literally sing it, find a way of making it singable. Um, just try a little bit on the da 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 da, and don't slow it down so that it feels like slow practice, but slow it down enough that you can follow it in your mind, if you like. So so I think that some bars
Mm.
I would revisit them. So on the way down, for example, that da da, just what? How does it come down again afterwards? And the yeah. So even though it comes down, I imagine that as la 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 la, because that is easy for me to comprehend and follow. It's easier than la la la, wherever that note is. I can't get that note otherwise. Um, just out of interest, because in my kind of romanticized brain, where I sort of, imagine that classical pianists are one way and jazz players another way, and you know, I think to myself that that must be easier for jazz players. I imagine these greats like Fred Hirsch going to Sophia, our teacher, and exploring the Chopin etudes, having been used to playing all this other stuff by ear, and actually them finding it easier because they're used to hearing the sounds, or is that just me romanticizing it all?
Um, this one is there's some actually some stuff that's kind of jazzy, like
Yeah.
these chords, like so it's like this is all this is something that you can use in the jazz context, like in some way, like and also here. This is quite jazzy. This
Yeah.
part. This so yeah, this one I think this is kind of easy for me to memorize.
Ah,
But
okay.
I don't know. Uh,
But
maybe.
I mean, do you think that in principle it's easier for jazz players to um, essentially remember tunes?
Yeah. Maybe you're more used to it, or more maybe like see the overview of it. Like this is this cadence. You have like jazz. You have like 2-5-1s and 2-5-1s in minor, and yeah, it's almost the same stuff in the classical music,
Mm,
but more simpler chords maybe. But it's
mm.
still uh, you hear these yeah 8-bar 4-bar phrases or like maybe I don't know.
Interesting. One thing I really like to do with that one is to juxtapose it with the piano portals pattern in C.
Mhm.
I'm putting you on the spot again, but do you remember the C one?
Yeah.
So the fact that that the thumb plays and then the little finger plays straight away in the right hand is not so useful for this, but what I find is if you play similar notes, so basically if you fill in
Mm.
some like another couple of notes with the middle fingers um, in between, so instead of
Yeah.
I mean, can you sort of essentially turn the maybe play the normal left hand, just that little broken chord thing, but in the right hand, just kind of make it up, but turn it into the etude somehow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's nice. Yeah. And then maybe just do a few up without coming down. So just like
Yeah.
dabba 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 dabba, a couple of times and then start low again. It's that business of starting with the thumb that really sets up the coordination, I think.
Mm.
Right, without coming down though. Just do some up and then just do another one up and then another one up. Oh, nice. Oh yeah, lovely. You should copyright that one. Yeah, brilliant. It's very interesting watching you do these things. I do appreciate you doing this.
Yeah, but it's it's I can feel it helps. So and I think it's pouring over to my other playing.
Oh really?
Yeah, my jazz playing and I was have you seen this video with Barry Harris when he says let the body do it when he
The what
plays
tune? Sorry.
on YouTube. It's called let the body do it. Barry Harris is like showing some students in Holland as a video, but he's playing this chord, and he said
Okay.
it's like with reckless abandon, saying, but
Okay.
it's like, and I was doing it like, and I was following that kind of step of doing that arpeggio there, and then so it's yeah, you can work on something like that also.
Absolutely. I think you've got to be, because it ultimately has to be an abandon,
Mm.
but you've got to bring enough attention to certain
Yeah,
things, but
yeah.
only in certain contexts,
Mm.
the most helpful contexts, if
Mm.
they're seized up or if they're preventing you from doing what you want to do, because
Mm.
otherwise, you can't progress. But certainly when you're performing,
Mm.
I would say the ideal is that you've familiarized your body with these freedoms enough
Mm.
that you can just be, certainly don't want to be focused on them at all when you're performing.
Mm. Yeah.
That reminds me of Gloria Gaynor, I Will Survive, the
Yeah.
arpeggio at the beginning.
It's an A flat minus sixth over G.
Right,
So,
nice.
so you can play like that.
Yeah.
I can send that video to you
Okay. Yeah, thanks.
because it talks about this also. Because
Really interesting.
so,
Interesting.
but like this is kind of a small little context to work on it.
Yeah.
Small, kind of simple, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
The whole Chopin Etude. It's just a intro. But
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
It's interesting that that just goes up and it doesn't
yeah,
come down again.
yeah,
So what might be interesting is to do that
yeah.
and then do all the bars of the Chopin up,
Yeah.
and then maybe another time find a way of going down again
Yeah.
with the improvisation or with the flourish.
If I'm going down, what I would do.
Yeah, I think again you don't want to be overthinking that because you just don't get the same feeling of landing on the thumb on the way down. So for me, it feels more like the rotation is taking over on the way down. Again, I don't want to be overthinking
Yeah.
it, but you definitely don't get the same feeling of landing on the thumb. Um, but what I'm saying is, if you can find that that turnaround and
Yeah.
make it feel good in the I Will Survive, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, on the way down, especially if I repeat some of those little ba 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 ba, ba, that feels like the flexion and extension is not really in my mind anymore. It feels more of a rotation. Oh yeah, but set it up by going up first. So do the up first, and then be really playful and rubato about it.
Yeah.
Has that got some potential?
Yeah. That was good. I know Artatum does. He does a lot of like those stuff.
That did actually sound quite a lot like Art Tatum, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
what a superhero he was.
Yeah.
Right, we better have some lunch, haven't we? Thank you so
Yeah.
much for doing this, Felix. I really, really appreciate it.
Yeah. Me too. I'm learning a lot. So.